All right, welcome back to another episode of the Extreme Lifestyle Living Podcast. Now, to be honest, I am so sick right now. I'm trying my best to keep everything together and cross my T's, dot my I's, and show up this week, but I don't get sick often. So when I do get sick, I feel like it's more than just a sickness. I feel like it's life trying to show me to calm the fuck down. I haven't been this sick since I was in Kelowna, which was 2.5 years ago, and it was like 4 or 5 days just bedridden. And this is kind of how this week went. So I'm gonna try to get through this entire podcast episode without having a coughing fit, without dying of low energy and all these different things. I'm on the end of it, so I should be good. But being asthmatic, it always fucks my chest up so much more. So I always have like a lingering cough for a bit, and it just sucks. So I'm gonna try to get through this as articulate as I can and as fast as I can without rushing and skipping over anything. However, today's topic of the podcast is I want to talk about how hard it is to set your boundaries and why it's so fucking important to stick to them. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because there's one key part, particularly the third part of this podcast. Like there's going to be 4 parts I talked about in total, revolving around why you got to set your boundaries and how hard it is to set them up. But the reason why I want to highlight number 3 is because, a lot of people, my clients particularly, are in part 3 of what I'm going to talk about. And I think it's so important to reiterate and almost revisit the basics as to why it's important to set your boundaries and how to set them up. So let's jump right into it. The 4 topics as to how to set up your boundaries and why it's so important is starting off with number 1, which is realizing that you need to set your boundaries up. And then also realizing how much you suffered from not setting your boundaries up. And that usually can take anywhere between a few weeks, few days, upwards to a couple years, because especially when you're coming from like traumatic backgrounds and you're realizing that you don't have no boundaries set up, no self-respect, no parameters in your life that keep you going. You're almost just reactively going through life. You almost realize you're just kind of like letting time come through your life. And then once you start to realize and gain clarity and control as to where you don't have any boundaries, you then get caught with the tail end of that where you start to realize how much you've been suffering because of no boundaries. And I feel like, at the beginning of the day, like when you start this journey, or at the end of the day, sorry, when you start this journey, this is subjective to every single person. So it's different for every person because it really depends on how much of your life you've been through where you've been maybe traumatized, And I think a lot of you guys have been through a lot of traumatic events in your life through, relationships, through your family, through friends, through just, shitty circumstances with life, which is, at the end of the day, part of the fucking journey that you go through. But I think, once you realize you're not setting the boundaries and that you have to set them, there's always those flashbacks of those lives of, I remember, that makes so much more sense. Especially in a relationship, it's easy to talk with those ones. Like, oh, why this guy or this girl, these people in these relationships act a certain way. And you realize all these different patterns and things, and usually you got to go through a bad breakup to realize some of these boundaries you got to set, and then you go through the turmoil of realizing how long you fucking suffered with them. A lot of us realize this with our family, right? Like I can particularly relate like heavily from grade 11 and 12, graduating into college and going to university. I really realized how many people live differently than I did and where I didn't have boundaries with certain things that I didn't even know existed, like with self-worth, self-love, and all these different things. And then going all through the flashbacks of my life of realizing why I was so insecure with certain things because I didn't have any boundaries, where I didn't know I could be an authority, all these different things, right? Like, and boundaries at the end of the day are just, like almost like your guidelines as to how to elevate your life to make sure everything else is in alignment with it, to make sure you're confident, collect, fulfilled, full of joy, and making sure your mental health isn't going down the fucking drain. And I think at the very first beginning part of how to set your boundaries and why you need to set them up is realizing you need to set them. And I think that's hard to understand because, again, you got to mirror that with the same thing you've been suffered through. So you're going to realize all of those times that you've been hurt or gone through something, those shittier days or shittier times of life. And then you got to realize those are the boundaries that you got to set up around it, which leads me to my second point. My second point is, once you start to gain clarity and control over the areas you need to set your boundary in, that's when you got to start to literally bring up all of the courage and bring up all of the confidence to set them, to look at everybody in your life and look at yourself in the mirror and be like, this is where I'm going to draw the line in the sand. And again, that can take its own time as well, let alone the first conversation we're talking about how long that takes to realize the boundaries, right? Building up the courage can take fucking years. It could take your whole life. And I think, this is where it becomes making sure we stay on topic here and have a good conversation is that, this is going to be something that you're going to continue to learn on your journey your entire life. There's always going to be new boundaries to reiterate the standard or, over here, all these different areas in your life, you're going to set boundaries and things, especially if you're an ambitious person, you want a lot out of life, you're going to go through a lot of different times in your life where you're going to have to set boundaries, reiterate boundaries, especially if you're in a loving relationship and you both individually are showing up relentlessly wanting to change your life, especially around a community where everyone's changing their life, things change, people grow, so the boundaries change, boundaries upgrade, all these different things, but the courage behind standing up up and be like, this is what I want to set, this is why I want to set it, that's fucking hard in its own. And I think, some people, like, once they become aware of where their life is at, it could take them almost their entire life before they build up the courage to say, this is where I want to draw a line and stand and why. And an easy one to relate to, a couple of them is one in a relationship. Like, how many times have you gone through relationships or been in patterns where you're like, I just got to like stand up for myself and stop letting the same thing happen to me. It could be cliche where it's like girls are always dealt with the same guys. And it's like, some of my clients, we have those conversations where it's like, why am I stuck in the same pattern with the same people? It's because you don't have boundaries around these things in your life. And then you go through the turmoil of dealing with, the backhand of like setting these boundaries, which will lead me to my third point in a moment. But I think, even in like family relationships or like around the gym is a good one too. Like, you start to protect your time in your life to eat healthy, meal prep, not go out and drink and smoke and do all these fucking drugs and ruin your life. You start to like reserve yourself and your energy, and that right there is a boundary. You know what I mean? And it takes a lot of courage to look at other people around you and be like, you want to know what? Like, I'm more important than this, and this. And this is where I'm drawing a line to stand because I want this out of this income. Or this X, I want X sort of this outcome. You know what I mean? Like, I want to go to the gym. I want to protect my time. I want to hit my 10K steps. I want to do all these different things. When I think like, building that courage up is hard. And it's like, between 1 and 2, which is realizing that you need to set your boundaries and realizing that you need to get it in a lot of courage to set them, you can go through a lot of ruffling of feathers of the people around you. A lot of your friends, your family members, people at work, like every single person in your life is going to like have a reflection of you go through them that changes because you're setting this boundary that makes you show up that much better for yourself. And to be honest, like, that's what leads me to the third part. After you start to like, really start to like get confidence, gain all this courage of this fiery intuition that knows that you're on the right path for yourself, and leading to my third part, which is, like I said, is the most important because most of you guys, my clients, like, are in this part right now, is you have to allow enough time for all of these boundaries to materialize. And what I mean by that is, like, you can't just lay down a foundation for a boundary and then it's set. Same with building houses. You got to allow the concrete to cement. That takes time. And this is where you really got to understand, like, how high are you shooting for your goals, or how high of a standard or quality of life are you aiming for? Like, me personally, I have a very, 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 very high standard. So I don't enjoy giving my time out. I don't go to coffees with people. I don't hang with people. And if I do, it has to be for a very good reason on both parties because I don't value my time small. Like, we got to get a lot out of life together, and I think for me, like, when I started to be like that, I lost so many people in my life because they just thought I was arrogant or being rude or just not caring about them or being self-absorbed and all these different things. And it's not true. Like, I literally right now with where I am at my life is a dream come true. I'm recording a podcast right now, even admitting about the anxiety around doing it because it's still nerve-wracking. Having a full client roster that's literally my community, my lifeline, and everything that I'm like leading by example with, that's growing by the day, and I have full freedom to my life. It means I can control everything. And it's like the people that are really around me understand that it's for the betterment of all of us. I'm not trying to live a mediocre life. And it's like mediocre subjected to all of our opinions and things like this, but I want a lifestyle that we know is out there. It's not too fucking far where we can all live together happy and abundant and money is not an issue and financial wealth is situated for all of us. And for that, this is what it looks like for me. And that's where the thing is, comes with you guys with realizing the courage to stand up and stand tall and say what you guys want in your life. But I think the biggest thing with like going through allowing it all to materialize is you're going to disappoint yourself and you're going to disappoint a lot of other people because it, like I said, it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen after 1 week or 2 weeks. It takes months and years on commitment. And I think the biggest thing with that is like, like you got to understand that this time in your life when you're like really standing tall, have all the courage, have all the confidence, these are all the boundaries you're standing on. This is like the transcendence abyss. This is where you're almost out in the murky waters, no fucking clue where you're at. Like, I like to describe this as like, you're on your ship in the middle of the ocean, lots of fog, you have no clue where land's at, but you know that you're sailing towards the goal. And it's the same thing with this. It's like, it's a transcending into the higher self. So you got to understand, it may take 2 days, it may take 2 years, it may take whenever, but this is where it becomes the thing where once you commit to your goals and really understand that, like, this is who you're becoming, you can look back and realize all of the things that you've grown and became so much better at in your life. And that's when we talk about anxiety. We talk about imposter syndrome. We talk about self-worth and self-value. Like, we all look for that one thing that's going to change your life, that one boundary and these one things. And it's like, once you start setting all these boundaries, you start to lose kind of focus as to like why you're even doing it, which is why the transcendence abyss is such an important part to understand about letting your goals and everything materialize around your boundaries, is because once you understand that your anxiety becomes lessened, your imposter syndrome becomes lessened, you literally have more self-worth, more self-care, your boundaries, like you feel more at heart. That's the thing that becomes so conflicting, and why you got to understand some people are not meant for your life forever, because when you start to internally feel better, more fulfilled, more at peace, less anxiety in terms of animosity, you're not like feeling like you're running on your back, so you start being proactive because your boundaries are working, you know your imposter syndrome in terms of you not feeling like you deserve to be this version in your life. You start to look back on the few weeks, the few months, the few years, and you're like, oh, I've showed up for almost 2-3 years straight. Oh, I've been working day after day after day. Like, especially like you and my clients that have and any person has a coach, like anyone that's investing into somebody else to get answers that they need. Like, I have 400 people in my corner that I'm investing to all the time, because I don't have all the answers. I have a shit ton of questions, and I know people that have the answers, so I'm going to go get them, and that's my boundaries, stand tall and tight access to these people. And I think, when you start to realize your mental health starts to grow incredibly, less anxiety, less depression, more motivation, more clarity, that's the reassurance, that's the validation there. And I think that's why the transcendence abyss, kind of like murky waters running through the woods, not know where you're going as you're allowing your life to materialize around your boundaries, is so hard, because that's when you get into the other one where it's like the fourth point, where it's like you got to understand it's not going to be easy. Like, and that's where you got to understand, like, it's not going to be something that's given to you on a platter that's like, here, you've accomplished this. It's not an A plus B equals C. And I think that's just why it's so gratifying to like really go on rants and tangents about boundaries, because it's subjective to you. But this framework of like, one, realizing you need to do them, and then two, this is like, where I'm going to have the draw in the sand. This is my courage. This is where I'm going to like, this is my sword I'm dying on. And then three, allowing it to materialize. And four, understanding it's not going to be easy, but worth it, is all of the framework for all of us to go through it. Because at the end of the day, all of us deserve to feel fulfilled. All of us struggle with anxiety. All of us get anxious sometimes. All of us struggle with imposter syndrome, feeling like we're not good enough for like our whatever role we're trying to get into. And I think that's where it's such a twisted thing, right? Because boundaries are essentially the guidelines for you to create the life that you deserve. And the life you deserve is when you start to feel imposter syndrome, that's clarity and validation that you are where you need to be. Because if you start to feel imposter syndrome like you shouldn't be that person, that's because you are that person. And then that's a whole different podcast episode of talking about self-acceptance, which is why I mentioned self-worth and self-value, because you start to increase your self-value, start to increase your self-worth, you start to pair, shit, I've been crushing this for a few weeks, don't even talk to me. Oh, I've been crushing this for a few months, don't even talk to me. Oh, I've been doing the gym X amount of times a week for this consistent for how many years? Why am I taking advice from you? Why do I feel like you're making me feel less than you? You don't even pay attention to your health. I could go on rants for forever, but I think like, the third point of this entire podcast I just want to highlight heavily is because many of you that I'm working with right now, my clients, you've already been through the stages of your life of realizing you need to set boundaries and going through the fucking turmoil of your goddamn brains of like realizing how long of your life has been trashed because of these no boundaries. You guys are also crushing it in terms of being courageous and setting these boundaries, looking at everybody and saying, go fuck yourself. This is why I'm drawing my line in the sand here. But now every single one of you guys, for the most part, is in the transcendence abyss where you guys are just kind of going in the water. Sometimes, some days you're emotionally invested and you guys get upset. Some days you're over here looking for validation. Some days you guys feel great. Some days you guys feel like, a little bit low. But I think at the end of the day, it's understanding like, how much more self-worth do you have? If you feel imposter syndrome, then that means that the boundaries are working. And then you got a self-acceptance and things like this, right? And you look at the quality of life, quality of relationships. Maybe you don't have 10 friendships now, but you got 4 fucking solid ones. You know what I mean? Maybe before you were riding high on caffeine and now you're getting great fucking sleeps. Like, there's all these little small qualities of life that you got to pay attention to and reflect on, because like I said, it's not transactional. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't do A plus B equals C with the situation. And then the last thing is just to accept it's not going to be fucking easy. But I can promise you, every second of you showing up within this realm of what we're talking about will always be worth it. And the funny thing is, and the podcast episode off is, it always starts off with why are you doing it? Why are you setting the boundaries? Why are you going to the gym? Why are you committing to yourself? Why are you putting yourself first? But I can promise you, there's always a moment where those same people that judge you flip the script, and it's how did you do it? And that's my favorite part, because talk about validation. The same people talking shit are now asking you how you did it. That's some real validation. But at the end of the day, I just want you guys all to take the main takeaway of set your boundaries. You're worth what's on the other side of them. When you feel imposter syndrome, it means you're exactly where you need to be, and you just need to accept who you are, keep moving forward, and I can promise you it's going to be better. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. I actually don't think I did that bad considering I was sick. Probably a little bit tangy because my brain's a little bit foggy and stuff, but I got everything situated, But I appreciate you all. Keep tuning in and do what you guys do best, which is set that fucking standard. Let's go.
But you bet me in that corner and I'll let it blow.